One of the things that I've really enjoyed about interviewing the various worship leaders that are on these videos is when we get off of the scripted questions, and some of those are great, some of the answers are great, but a lot of times the things that they just kind of spontaneously just start talking about, whatever the topic might be. And sometimes it's things that they throw in there because they think it's so very important. And one of those a while back was my friend Rory Noland. And you need to understand, in case you haven't already caught this, Rory isn't just some guy that I found walking along the road. He was the original music director for Willow Creek Church in Chicago. He wrote the book The Heart of the Artist and several others since then. That book has influenced lots and lots of worship leaders and worship teams all over the world. So Rory has this wealth of information. And so he really knows what he's talking about when it comes to worship and worship leading. And so as we were talking there in the interview, the day that I interviewed him, he just started in on this idea of having multiple different people singing or not singing up on the platform. So I'm just going to let him talk to you for a minute.
The whole idea of the worship leader singing throughout. One of the very popular, common things that we see today is the shared lead. And so maybe, the male starts, he is singing lead on this song. And so the other singers on the stage are not singing. But they come in on the chorus or something like that. And this has actually become, commonplace in a lot of places. I see it everywhere I go. And I question, what does that communicate to our people? And usually when I'm asked, when I'm in a consulting kind of role with a church, they've asked me to observe a service, and I see that, the first thing I ask is, were we supposed to keep singing? Were we supposed to sing along during that? And they're in all, 90% of the time they always say, oh yeah. I said, well, how come you guys weren't? And we tend to forget, unless you have a really rare kind of culture, worship culture, people are not sitting on the edge of their seats going, oh, I can't wait to sing. Most of them are a little shy about singing and participation. I mean, we don't live in a culture that sings or even plays or makes music together. We listen to music, but we don't make it. We don't sing together. And so that's, a lot of people approach worship as spectators as a result. We live in a very consumeristic driven culture. And so if you give them any excuse not to sing, they won't. And so I highly encourage, if you're singing, sing all the time. Even if somebody else has the lead, well, step away from the mic, but keep singing. Because what that communicates to us is, this is all sing. This is an all sing right here.
I still remember the day when I did the interview with Rory, and he started into this, and I'm thinking, if I use this segment, there's going to be some people who are not going to be happy about it. So please recognize that I am aware of that already, okay? But the fact is that I think he's right. And see, I have a unique perspective that very, very few people have about the body of Christ. I have had the incredible privilege of ministering in literally hundreds of churches all across North America on Sunday morning. And only a couple of times have I ever been involved in the worship ministry that morning. Most of the time I'm there preaching, and so I get to observe people during the time of praise and worship. And I have seen again and again exactly what Rory's talking about, that when the main vocalist drops out, a big chunk of the congregation drops out. There's a solo, maybe the main worship leader is a guy, and there's a solo with just a gal singing in there at the beginning and nobody else singing on the platform. Guess what's happening? Almost nobody in the congregation is singing because nobody's quite sure what to do. And it's not something that they're intentionally trying to say, don't sing. No, it's simply we in the congregation are catching the idea, whether it's intentional or not, that, oh, this person is doing a solo, so we're not supposed to sing. And please understand, that idea is great in a concert setting, But if you really want people to participate in the time of praise and worship, then we need to show them, to demonstrate to them that this really is what they're supposed to be doing. Not standing and watching as the other singers are doing when there's a solo, but to participate, to join in with what's going on. And again, it's not intentional. We're not trying to convey that, but we're conveying it nevertheless when we do that kind of thing. And so I just want to challenge you to think about that and maybe make some adjustments based on that idea. Rory goes on in that interview and he shares a little bit more.
I love it when instrumentalists can sing, and I tell my instrumentalists, hey, you know the chorus, and you don't, sing along as you play. It doesn't matter if you have a mic, but what you're communicating when an instrumentalist sings, first of all, I just think that is gold. It's like, wow. Because what it communicates, actually more than anybody else on the platform, is that, yeah, we're here to worship. I'm not just a musician. I'm not just playing an instrument here. I'm not a singer in a rock and roll band. I'm actually a worshiper. And when our musicians and our instrumentalists get that, it takes their involvement, their participation in the ministry to the next level. They keep growing. They take that next step as private worshipers themselves. And it's a beautiful thing, I think, to watch when the lights go on and they're like, lights go on in their mind and they're like, wow, I'm a worshiper. How cool is that?
One of the things that I really like about Rory Noland is that he's been in these huge mega church settings, and yet he recognizes that the whole thing that we're doing is all about God, that our worship is for Him, that our focus should be on Him. And that's what he's telling us here in this segment that we just watched about the instrumentalists being involved, not just playing their instrument, but actually voicing their worship to God, if at all possible. Obviously, a trumpet player can't do that, okay? But at the same time, having that kind of a heart that says, I want to worship God in the midst of what I'm doing up here. And that communicates to the congregation volumes. He's right. He said, I think that's gold, and I think he's exactly right in that assessment, because it really makes a difference in how people see us up on the platform. They're not just up there performing. Well, they are, but it's for the audience of one. And see, when we up in front get that, it changes how the congregation responds. And so I want to encourage you to encourage your instrumentalists to also voice their worship to God whenever possible. And I recognize that there are going to be times that they won't be able to do that. I get that. But at the same time, make that something that we're moving toward more and more, to really be involving us fully, not just in making music, but in worshiping God.
Brought to you by myworshipleadingcoach.com.
Helping you to be more fully equipped as a worship leader.